You are here with By the Cover. Today I'll be reviewing the Bachman books by Stephen King. Overall, I would give this story collection a 6.27 out of 10 rating. This review may contain spoilers, so if you do not want to hear those, click off now. The synopsis. The Bachman books is a collection of 4 short novels by Stephen King, published under the pseudonym Richard Bachman between 1977 and 1982. The first story in the Bachman books is entitled Rage. This is about a high school student that comes to school one day and murks 2 teachers, then holds his class hostage while they chat about life. Stephen King took this out of publication due to it being linked to several shootings that would happen in the future. In my opinion, banning the book just makes people more interested in it. The general consensus of this story is that most people do not like it. I rated this story a 7 out of 10, and I rather liked it. The story really isn't that violent aside from the very beginning of it. By today's standards, you see far worse on cable television. The heart of the story is the students conversing together. Stephen King is very good at creating distinct characters, and he is great at coming-of-age stories. This is where the strength of this story lives. In high school, many kids barely listen to each other, and they usually don't stray outside of their own cliques. The story focuses on sitting everyone down and having a conversation. Kids learn about each other, which in my opinion is healthy behavior. It eventually does turn dark because it's a Stephen King story, but I liked the idea of kids talking out their differences, and I thought this was one of the stronger entries in the collection. Next up is The Long Walk, which I rated a 9.6 out of 10. The Long Walk is one of Stephen King's best novels. Again, he is right in the pocket of the things that he does well. This is a dystopian coming-of-age tale. The characters are all very distinct. This was a story that when I heard the premise of it, it sounded very boring, and yet it became one of my favorite Stephen King stories. There's a lot of bonding in this one, and a lot of loss. The Long Walk is hands down the strongest story in this collection. Next is Roadwork. This is a story about a guy named Barton, who is a man who does a really, really bad job at coping with life. I rated this story a 3 out of 10. I think the story had a few strong points, but it was a very frustrating read, primarily because I could not connect or relate with Barton, who was the primary character. The parts of the story I loved: Barton's interactions with the mob boss Magliore. I don't know what it is, but Stephen King can write entertaining interactions with mob bosses like no one's business. Anytime he does this in his books, I've really enjoyed it. I liked the primary character's first interactions with Olivia, who is a 20-year-old hitchhiker. She is my favorite character in this book. Her interactions with Barton were awesome the first time they met. Unfortunately, in subsequent interactions, which are mostly over the phone, the magic is lost with her character. I was rooting for every character in this story except Barton. I simply wanted them to get away from him unscathed because he is just a crappy human being in general. His actions make no sense and are ultimately cowardly. The story beats you down with Barton making bad decision after bad decision. But what really gets me is this isn't a story about someone who's unsure in life as it's changing. This is a story about a guy who blatantly lies to your face with confidence, and yet his actions don't match his tone. Barton's confidence is what threw me off. He makes you think he has a plan all along by his voicing, but he never does. He was just an idiot. The story is pretty much just a character study on Barton, but he's not worth the study. The action of this over 400-page book happens in 24 pages at the end of it. So overall, not a great story. Moving on to the last story in the collection, The Running Man. This is a story about a dystopian society that has poor people compete in a deadly game for money. Ben Richards joins the game to save his wife who has cancer. I rate this one a 5.5 out of 10. I give the story credit for having predicted reality TV way before it actually happened. It's not a bad story, but a lot of it is very bleak, set in a dirty dystopian society. I personally like to enjoy the journeys I'm along for, and I just did not really enjoy the journey here. It's a clever premise with a decent ending, but most of it is just a guy running from place to place. The Bachman books is a collection that I think has one really good story, one pretty good story for the right audience, and two other fairly forgettable entries. The average rating of all the stories turns out to be 6.27 out of 10, which is not bad for a shorter story collection. That's about it. We'll catch you later.